Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Sandra Gutierrez and this is the Crochet Colorwork Masterclass. So let me first introduce myself. My name is Sandra, like I said, but I go as Nomad Stitches on Instagram and Ravelry. You can also find me on my website, which is nomadstitches.com. I love crochet and I love garment design and I especially love color. I even wrote a book about it. It's called Colorful Crochet Knitwear and it combines all of those three things into really fun garments. In this masterclass, we are going to cover 4 different colorwork techniques that are done with crochet. Now, a lot of people think that color work is just one single technique, but there's actually loads of different ways in which you can add color to your garments. So hopefully today will give you a really good idea of what the possibilities are. So we're going to talk about these 4 techniques, what they're about, how they're used, what they're good for, what are some of the pros and some of the cons of them. And yes, that's just my opinion, but hopefully it will give you an idea of what is best for which project. And I'm also going to show you examples of my designs using these techniques. Now, this is not an extensive class in which you will finish knowing how to do all of these techniques. However, they will give you an idea of which technique to research further. So if after today you say, I love mosaic crochet, I want to learn how to do it, then you can dive deeply and either go to my website and learn how to do it through my blog or my videos, or you can even buy my book, or you can learn on your own, right? So I just wanted to give you today all the possibilities that are out there when it comes to color work and crochet for you to really know and understand what's best for the purpose of your design or the garment that you want to decorate with some color work. We're going to start with tapestry crochet. We're going to cover intarsia, mosaic crochet, and also I'm going to cover stripes and color blocking. If you want to learn more about me, you can find me on Instagram as Nomad Stitches. You can also go to my website, nomadstitches.com. And if you like any of the patterns that I show you today, any of the designs, you can always find them on my website, on Ravelry, even on Etsy if that's your preferred platform. And you can always buy my book as well to learn how to do all of these techniques and lots more things. Okay, let's get started then. Alright, so tapestry crochet is basically what is known as color work. In knitting terms, it would be like stranded knitting or even Fair Isle knitting, some people would call it. So this is simply drawing with your yarn basically. So usually it's done following a chart and you see the color of the stitch and you simply change colors and use that color for that stitch and then change for the next one, etc, etc. And you can make loads of different designs following charts. It's a very cool technique. There are a few downsides when it comes to tapestry crochet compared to stranded knitting, for example. So on knitting, the stitches look the same on the front than on the back. So if you are knitting on one row and you are purling on the wrong side, then your fabric will look the same on the right side. However, with crochet, it doesn't work that way. If you single crochet on one side and then you turn your way and your work and single crochet on the other side, the right side and the wrong side of the fabric will look different. Your stitches will not look the same. So when you are changing colors, that will make an impact in the color work. Also, stitches in crochet are not usually right on top of each other and they don't kind of fill in the gaps. So color work in tapestry crochet can be a little bit not perfect, which is not to say that it's not good. And there are ways in which you can make it better. So one of these things is to use different stitches. Doing tapestry crochet flat with single crochet. Usually we use single crochet. You can also do double crochet as well, but I usually use it with single crochet. Working it flat will look something like this. Now, it doesn't look bad. You can still see the image, but it's not very clear. If you use, however, single crochet on the back loop only and work only in the round, then it will look like this. Now, it's a lot clearer. It's still not perfect, but it's a lot clearer. So when you do tapestry crochet and you work in the round, you work only on the right side of the stitches as your front, as your right side of your work, which means that they will look a lot more uniform. That's why we do things in the round. Yes, that is a problem if you want to make like a blanket, for example. However, the good thing about tapestry crochet when it's worked flat is that when you have a big design, sometimes those imperfections aren't as noticeable, which is really good. But if you wanted to have a really like pretty picture like you get with knitting, with stranded knitting or Fair Isle, you might not get the same definition. Other stitches that you can use that help a lot when it comes to stitch definition and completing a chart so it looks really good is single crochet on the back loop only, like I mentioned, or you can also do extended single crochet. That's what I did on my Ailillac pullover. So this is a pattern from my book, and it's actually the only pattern that I have in which I've used this stitch, and it's really, really good. I love the way the color work comes together with this stitch, and it's also all worked in the round. And the other stitch that I love to use for tapestry crochet is what is called waistcoat stitch. So it looks like this, and it is basically like Fair Isle with knitting. It looks the same, it has the same idea. The stitches all look like little V's or little hearts that pile up on top of each other, and it looks really, really nice. The only problem with this stitch is that it really can only be worked on the right side to get that specific look. If you start working flat and you go back and forth, then you won't get the same kind of V's, the same kind of stitch definition and color definition as you would otherwise. The other thing, which is not a great thing about waistcoat stitch, is that it's quite difficult if you've never worked it. So if this is your first time attempting something new, maybe don't start with waistcoat stitch. However, if you've been crocheting for a long time and you would like to try something new, then make sure that you are sitting down and you've had your coffee to give it a go. The thing is, you have to go into the stitch instead of working on the top loops like you would normally do into a single crochet. That's why it's also called central single crochet sometimes, or waistcoat stitch. And getting in there can be a little bit tricky. So examples of this technique of tapestry crochet in my patterns are my Taroko sweater, which is over here. This one uses the waistcoat stitch, and I also have some lace inserts that kind of break the whole, oh, I have to work central single crochet forever, because like I said, it can be quite exhausting, but it looks really good. And the other one I have is the Aztec sweater over here. So these look like they're knitted, you know, the fabric looks like it's been knitted, but however, it's been only worked with a crochet hook. How cool is that? I do use a bigger crochet hook when I'm using waistcoat stitch because I want to make loads of space in that fabric. Also, waistcoat stitch can be very, very dense because you basically hug the whole stitch, the whole below stitch on every stitch that you work. So the fabric can get very thick. And if you're gonna wear it, you don't wanna wear a piece of cardboard. So I use a large hook with thin yarn to make loose fabric that will fit nicely and look like clothes, and again, not cardboard. And the color work looks really cool. So yeah, that was Taroko and Aztec. Intarsia is so much fun. It is definitely one of my favorite techniques when it comes to color work, basically because it's so easy. Yes, just like with tapestry crochet, you also do it following charts. However, in Intarsia, it's done more with bigger blocks of color. While with tapestry crochet, you would be changing colors over and over again. That means you have to carry your yarn along. With Intarsia, you wouldn't do that. You would have different live strands of yarn for each color, and then when you get to the next color, you simply change colors and then drop your old color and leave it where it is. And then continue working, leave it where it is, pick up the next one and continue working. And then on the way back, you just pick them up where you left them. And that's how you can make different shapes, different angles for things. And it looks really, really, really cool. So here are a few examples of my patterns that use this technique. These are the heartbeat mittens. They're very easy to make, very small, so you can finish quickly, and I really like them. And then there's also my Coyoacán top. As you can see, they use very different stitches. So Coyoacán uses the griddle stitch, which creates kind of like a corrugated texture to it, which means that the color work kind of works really well. Because like I said before, with single crochets or with any crochet stitch, it looks different on the right side than on the wrong side. So it's just really obvious when you have straight lines, like you won't get a straight line. And it's just, I don't really like the way it looks, but sometimes it looks all right. However, when you add the texture to it, it just creates noise around these lines that makes sense. So they're not straight lines. However, that's okay, and I like that. And on the other hand, with the heartbeat mittens, I use a stitch that I call a double slip stitch. Some people call it a yarn over slip stitch. And when you do intarsia with this stitch, because it has the same effect as waistcoat stitch that we talked about before, where the stitches line up on top of each other, then the color changes are super clean, and I really like the look of this. And I've actually used these two stitches for intarsia on most of my intarsia projects because I just really like the way they look. Now here comes the disadvantages of intarsia, which is probably one of the reasons why most people are afraid of it. And I tell you, you shouldn't be afraid of it, but I understand why. The problem with intarsia is that, like I said before, you have to have a live yarn ball or whatever for each color in your chart, which means that if on one row, let's say you have 3 colors, black, yellow, and then blue. Okay, you need a black, you need a yellow, and you need a blue. Great, that's not so many, right? But what about charts where you have 18 different colors? You need to have a live ball or a live piece of yarn for each one of them. So let's say you have white, pink, white, yellow, white, blue, white, red, white. Then you need a white one for each one of those. And then you need the blue, you need the red, you need the yellow, you need the green, whatever. And that can mean a lot of yarn just hanging there while you work. And that can be terrifying. But let me tell you something that is completely honest and true. I have never had a knot in my intarsia projects. Never. Yes, I have gotten tangles, lots and lots of tangles. But the thing is, if you keep your yarn organized in a bag, then when you turn your work and turn your yarn, it all stays put. There are no actual like knotting happening. And it can be very, very stressful to have all of those ends together just hanging there, but it is possible to do it. I promise. I give you my word. Now, one of the things that helps with intarsia is, one, like I said, organize your yarn. So you make bobbins of how many, how much yarn you think you will need. You can kind of calculate it by the number of stitches you have in each color, but sometimes you can just kind of go with the flow and figure it out and have bobbins, or you can have separate balls of yarn, which makes it a lot easier. And the way I do it is I organize them in a basket. And I keep my basket where I keep my project. And this is not one of those projects that you carry around in the subway because that's just too many bits of yarn, right? So you keep that in a basket. And then when you turn your work, so let's say that I have a little piece of fabric over here. Let's say I'm working on this side. So I finish working and then I turn around. And then I finish working, and instead of turning around in the same direction, I turn around in the opposite direction. That means that my yarn is doing this, and then I untangle it. And then it does this again, and then I untangle it. However, if you turn in the same direction, well, I can't tangle my fingers any further, but you know what I mean. You would just keep making that spiral go, and that can create more tangles in your work. So that is probably the biggest tip I can give you for intarsia. Do not turn in the same direction every time. If you cannot remember to turn it in the opposite direction, what you can do is when you turn your work, you turn your basket with your yarn. And then just do that over and over and over again, and that will avoid that whole spiral happening. Another thing that's important to mention about intarsia is that you can use any stitch to work this technique. So if you prefer flat single crochet, then do it with flat single crochet. If you prefer double crochet, if you want to even do lace stitches, whatever you want, as long as you're able to change your yarn and the colors, you are completely fine. Another thing though to keep in mind is that you do have to be able to come back and pick up those colors, which means that you have to work things flat. If you work things in the round, then after you join the round, you need to make sure that you turn around and go back the way you came. Okay, technique number 3, mosaic crochet. If you know me and if you know my patterns and my design style, you know that I absolutely love mosaic crochet. And yes, I do. The biggest reason why I love it is because it is so easy. So mosaic crochet is done following charts that look like this. Now, these charts show you which are the long stitches that connect rows with each other and which are short stitches. Now, the thing that makes mosaic crochet so easy is that you only work with one color at a time. So you work one row with one color and then you change, and then you work the next row with one color and then you change, and you don't ever have to carry yarn along. You don't have loads of ends hanging out like with intarsia. You just have to worry about one color per row, which is really, really cool. One thing that a lot of people don't know about mosaic crochet is that there are actually 2 different variations of mosaic crochet technique. There is what I called single row mosaic crochet and standard mosaic crochet. Standard mosaic crochet is worked with 2 rows per color. So you go and come back with the same color. And the charts are read a little bit differently than with single row mosaic crochet. Single row, like the name says it, it's worked with 1 row per color. Some people also call it overlay mosaic, which is a very valid name. However, overlay is a little bit different, and I just like to differentiate it from other techniques. So to me, single row mosaic crochet works well because it describes very clearly that it's 1 row per color. Now, the problem with having 1 row per color is that you go, but then you can't come back. So you have to work in the round when you are doing single row mosaic crochet. If you really don't want to work in the round, then what you have to do is cut your yarn at the end of every row, which is not ideal. At least I hate the idea of doing that, but it works, and sometimes it's just necessary to do, which is fine. Now, here are some examples of these techniques. For single row mosaic, I have my mosaic jumper, which is one of my most popular patterns, and you can see why. It's so much fun to make. But here's the secret about single row mosaic crochet. It is incredibly easy. So easy. So for a single row mosaic crochet, when you look at the charts, you see all those squares. Now they're all single crochet on the back loop only, except the X's are double crochets on the front loop only, 2 rows below. That's that. How easy is that? Now, the other technique, which I call standard mosaic crochet, gets a little bit more complicated with the chart. So this is an example of a standard mosaic crochet pattern. This is my Kitzbühel pullover, and it's the fabric that it creates is a lot thinner, so you don't get that extra texture and extra thickness to it, which is really, really good for garments. And yeah, it looks really good. I think the color definition is great, and to be honest, I prefer it to the single row mosaic crochet because you don't have that limitation of having to work in the round or on the right side only, which is really quite annoying sometimes. But the technique is great, and reading the charts is a little bit different. So looking at the charts over here, the X's are still long double crochets and regular double crochets, but the stitches below the double crochet, so the ones that are of a different color than the row, for example, on a white row, the gray stitches that don't have X's are chain 1 and skip 1 stitch. Which, yes, it can get a little bit tiring to follow, but once you get used to it, it really is easy to follow these charts. And now to our fourth technique, which is stripes or color blocking. Now, this is not much of a technique. There's not many rules out there when it comes to stripes. Like, there's a few things that you can think about, like how thick your stripes are going to be. If you're going to be working in the round, you can have stripes that are odd number, for example, 1 or 3 rows of stripes, because you are coming back to the join, and it doesn't matter how many rows you have per stripe. But if you're working flat, then you need your stripes to be an even number of rows, right? 1, 2, or 4, so that you can go and come back and change colors. Things like that you can think about when it comes to stripes, but really it's quite straightforward, right? You make stripes. And I was thinking about not mentioning this technique, however, I just love it because it is a great way to introduce color into a garment, especially if you're new with color or you're a little bit scared of how to use color in a garment or in a project. Stripes are the way to go, especially also because you can use any color that you have in your stash. If you're not sure about, you know, do I have enough yarn, just find all the different colors that you have and make whatever pattern you have with all of those different colors and change whenever you feel like changing, and it can create something beautiful. So for example, this top over here, this is my Xochitl top, and it's not meant to have different colors, but I didn't have enough yarn back then when I designed it. So as you can see, it just has different colors and it works. It works really well as color blocking. Another way of using stripes is to create fades. So for example, in this pattern, this is my confetti DK pullover. I just love it. I just love the way the fade looks. And the way you accomplish this look is simply by interchanging lines. So yeah, you'll be working with color A, then you'll have 1 stripe of color B, then 2 or 3 of color A again, and then you'll kind of add more B, and then more B, and then less A, and then you just kind of do that striping, and then you get this really cool fade. And I just love that. I love that you can do that with stripes. Another great thing about this technique, especially with color blocking, is that you can think about your body and think about how you can enhance the parts that you like the most. So bright colors usually take more attention than dim colors. So if you have, for example, very broad shoulders, you might want to put a light color at the top and a darker color at the bottom, so that it kind of, you know, pays more attention at your bottom than at your top. You know, things like that. You can play with color to kind of bring attention to the parts of your body that you want to enhance the most, or that you want to call attention to. I know this is maybe a silly thing to think about, because yes, we should love our bodies like they are, but it's nice to think about how colors influence the way we look and feel, you know, so just a thought. But yeah, that is my 4th technique, which is stripes and color blocking. So yeah, if you want to know more about these techniques, if you want to really learn how to make each one of them properly, you know, the ins and outs, tips and tricks, definitely check out my website, nomadstitches.com/learn. I have loads of blog posts, loads of videos there. You can also find my book on Amazon and most places where books are sold, but you can find more information about it on my website as well. That is Colorful Crochet Knitwear by Sandra Gutierrez. I hope you've enjoyed this little summary of color work techniques, and that it gives you an idea of all the wonderful things that you can do with color in crochet. And don't feel limited to one, you know, just try whatever else you want to try. And maybe you'll find your new favorite technique, who knows. All right, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. My name is Sandra, and have a great day.